Well, welcome to the cast of Cinderella and the director of Cinderella. We're so thrilled to have you each with us.
Thank you.
So I guess, why don't we start off with you, Kyle?
Okay.
Cinderella is such a familiar story.
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing with this production, this retelling of the classic tale, to make it different, to make it your own take?
To make it my take, well, the story has been around for centuries and centuries. With this version, it's a bit different than what people know of the 1950 Disney classic. I think for me, how I feel I'm approaching this in a fresh way is simply that it's my first time to direct Rossini. And I truly try to come into preparation for it with a blank slate and realize how I respond to the music and how I respond to the story personally, and then share that with them and see how they honestly respond to the story. And just by default, you do arrive at something fresh and new because it's new players doing pieces that have never been pulled together before.
You know, I find it so interesting that you've never done any Rossini, and this is your fourth time with Virginia Opera.
Mm-hmm.
Previous appearances, La Boheme,
Mm-hmm.
a little comedic elements in there.
Couple moments. There was a little Swan Lake reference.
La Boheme, you came back for Lucia, and then last season with Elixir of Love, which is very comedic, and so this is kind of in between. I would say it's very comedic, but there are elements of high drama too.
Yeah, I think that's what makes, in a way, this piece difficult, is because you do have these moments where things are moving, and then you hit these dramatic lines that really pull out of time and stretch it, so you kind of never truly live in the middle. Now, I do feel like the best opportunity for a performer is to always take the caps, those end caps off, and to push those extremes. So I'd like to believe that that's what we're achieving here in this process.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, one thing I find interesting, and maybe will come into you guys as well, is that Rossini, he got the libretto for this on Christmas Day. I think it was a Christmas gift from the librettist, basically. He was like, write something. 24 years of age, this composer. And he writes it in about 22 days, I think. He just feverishly composes this opera, and it's premiered January 25th, which is around the time of this taping, maybe, you know? And so happy birthday, 203! Happy birthday, Cinderella. But so for me, that's what makes this just incredibly magical.
Totally.
The fact that it came together that quickly.
You know, also, I think there's something to the fact that he was so young and the librettist was only 33. So there is that feeling of this was created by young people. It does have this kind of excited, rhythmical youth to it. Yeah. And it's so apparent in the music and the libretto.
So I guess one of the other questions I'd love to find out is you've done the role before, Alyssa. Mm-hmm. David, this is your first time singing The Prince. Mm-hmm. Kyle, it's your first time. So it's also my first time conducting this opera. So it's a lot of firsts. What do you hope to bring that has a fresh life, breathes fresh air into the piece for each of you?
I mean, I always like roles that have high notes in the score. So this is our
tenor.
Yes. So, but I also appreciate that, Rossini, especially in this score, which is a little bit later than Barber of Seville, he kind of wrote out some ideas for you, which I really appreciate a roadmap. When I'm doing my own color tour, for someone to be like, here's a good idea, this is what's worked in the past, and then kind of make my own personal stamp on it. I'm really looking forward to getting to show that about the role of Ramiro. So.
For me, I think it's every time I do Rossini with a new group of people, I feel like that group of people brings a completely different energy to each of their roles. So, singing this with David is slightly different than the last Prince I sang it with. And it not in a bad or good way, just it's a little different because everyone has a different personality and everyone has a different take on what they see on the page. And I think that's what's so great about opera in general is that you can see the same opera a million times, and if the cast is different, it's going to be different. Even if the cast is not different, it might be different night to night because the instrument you're using is your body. So every day that's different. Every day you bring something else into the room, you feel a little different, or you might have a different idea and go, I want to try this.
I think that my greatest hope for finding new voices in this is that, as these guys mentioned, this is a first time for a lot of people and it's a fresh group. We've said that before and we come together. I really hope that it is truly that magic that we find. So, as much as the magic, the bibbidi boppity boo, may not be there for people, there's a different sense of magic that is actually human magic, that is real magic, that we all can experience, that it's not something far away, but it is actually something tangible for all mankind, and that's who she is. She is after something that, like, everyone's after, which is just to belong. So
I think you all bring up amazing points, very excellent points. Alyssa, what you said about the people you're working with changing and influencing how you approach the piece and also making it fresh for the audience. I think about opera as a spectator sport. What you guys are doing vocally and physically, for that matter, in a Kyle Lang production, what you're doing is athletic. It's truly, it's virtuosic in the voice, it's athletic physically, and as an audience participant, as a person that's watching this show, I'm rooting for you, but I'm also like, are they going to make that triple axel? And it's thrilling. It's because you have the crazy high notes, you have all this melismatic, coloratura that's just very florid and virtuosic. Both of you have that, and it's so impressive. And Kyle, what you've done with the chorus,
I try to put it out there, and then you have this kind of scape. And then you go from there and you keep layering and undoing and changing until we arrive at something that really creates a big arc for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Alyssa, you were a Herndon Foundation Emerging Artist in the 2014-15 season. It was a year of Sweeney Todd and other things, but it ended with Salome and Traviata, which I remember specifically. You participated in the educational and outreach tour, and you covered main stage roles. So you had a full season as an emerging artist, and now you're coming back here triumphantly, making really your main stage debut in a leading role.
Yeah, this was really my first big girl job, honestly, like right out of grad school. I went straight from grad school to here at Virginia Opera, and it was my first experience working for a full year in an opera company and learning how that works and how that functions and what the expectations are for you every day. And that really helped me lay a groundwork for how to be a working singer. Having that experience to be really shepherded and guided by people like you and Shelby, and have those people really interested in how you develop and how you lay the groundwork for a life like that is so helpful. And I think that really is good for any young singer who's making the transition from school to trying to do this as a full-time artist.
Well, we're so proud of all that you've accomplished since leaving the program, and we're thrilled that you're back.
Me too. I'm so excited.
It's a bit of a Cinderella story. Which leads me to the final question for each of you. This is Cinderella. It's not the Disney Cinderella. It's a little bit different. There's no fairy godmother. There's no stepmother. There's no the shoe, the slipper, glass slipper. All these things are little subtle differences. I'm curious to know from each of you, what's your own personal favorite Cinderella story?
Honestly, because I'm such a clown. This one?
That's a great answer.
Well, there's more, because there's a lot more comedy and fun in this. Not to say, that's not what it's all about. But there is more variety in character. And certainly that takes the cake for me.
I hate to copy your answer, Pat. And it's not just this one. I sort of just in general like the operatic tellings of Cinderella, and I've also been very lucky to have sung the Massenet version of this as well. And actually immediately after this, I am going to sing the Massenet version of Cinderella, so I'm going to do it in a different language, and it's a totally different take with more magic. It's a different feel because it came later in musical history, so you're hearing sort of a progression of the way people are telling the story through opera, which I think is interesting. But I have always loved this one because of how human it is, and I love the Massenet as well because of how just enchanting it is, because you have all of the ballet, you have this massive orchestra. It's just a different feel.
I think it's kind of ironic that currently in news today we have someone wanting to leave royalty. instead of be a Cinderella. They want to find their own purpose in this driven life that they've been craving for the past few years. And so that's kind of what I thought immediately was, you know, you had Meghan marrying into royalty, and now she and Prince Harry, they want to leave and find their own purpose in life. And I think that is a Cinderella story in itself.
Yeah.
It's just kind of ironic, you know, that it's happening right now. So.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I hope that our audiences walk away from this production and say, that's my new personal favorite Cinderella story. So I know that each of you, you're doing everything within your power to make that a reality, and I can't wait for our audiences to see your performances, to see your production. It's going to be fabulous. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Seguitando quel discorso che non ho cominciato dai miei lunghi viaggi ritornato e il mio poco trovato che fra quondave capodondolato e spirando ha ordinato che a vista qual cambiale io sia sposato o son diseredato e fatto un invito a tutto il vicinato e trovando un boccone delicato per me l'ha destinato ho detto e